Time now for Carrying the Load, which is presented by the Chevrolet Silverado. We mentioned it before. Grant Williams is on his way to Dallas. The Celtics, Mavericks, and Spurs completed a three-team sign-and-trade deal, with Williams signing a 4-year, $54 million deal with the Mavericks. In return, the Celtics are getting 2 second-round picks and a $6.2 million trade exception. That is going to do it for the Chevrolet Sportsnet Central update, but that is not all when it comes to Grant Williams. He is the focus of this next segment and also our megaphone poll today. Are you worried about the Celtics front court depth? You have 4 choices there. Nope, just a little, more than a little, and 100% yes. Right now, more than a little and 100% yes are the leaders in the clubhouse at 40%. Chris Forsberg, I voted more than a little because there is some concern. Are you concerned about the fact that they have moved some pieces around, but the piece that they got in return in Kristaps Porzingis is oft injured, along with Rob Williams, and Al Horford is 37?
Yeah, so undeniably, even as much as I love Rob, I would be lying if I said I'm not concerned a little bit about the availability of that trio. And so Grant was a great luxury, as much as he faded from the rotation last year. Being able to put him in there, whether it was a spot starter or, just as a backup big man, it was a nice luxury for Joe Mazzulla to have. And now you don't have that. And so do you think Sam Hauser and O'Shea Brissett and Jordan Walsh, can they fill those minutes? Like, maybe. But I do think there's probably another piece that needs to be added to this front court just to make it feel good about the depth that they have. I think it's easy to dismiss, like, the whole Grant moving on to Dallas thing. And I've heard a lot of fans say, just a role player. And certainly he didn't get his chance in this playoff run based on what Joe Mazzulla thought, he could lean on him. But just rewind it to 2022. And Grant's defense on Kevin Durant and Giannis and throwing him against Bam, I think we take for granted, which is, ironic pun there, like what Grant brought to this team. And it's not going to be just like snap your fingers and replace it. So I hope the Celtics are ready to sort of find somebody, and maybe it's just got to be a low cost option on this roster and maybe developing young talent. But I wonder if there's something else to come down the road that bolsters the depth there. And it might not happen at the start of the season. Maybe that's something further down the road if it becomes an issue.
Yeah, Max, what did they lose when they traded away Grant Williams? And do you see anybody on the roster that can step in and fill the role he played?
Trenni just lost Beauty and the Beast to me. When I think about, Grant being gone, you lose Marcus Smart, the brains and the toughness. Those two guys, how do you replace them? That's going to be a big question. The only thing I think about is still July, and the first game is until October. Whatever it is, I'm almost like Forsberg in the fact that I just see something big about to happen with this team. And I'm not sure if it's going to be a trade, a move, what it's going to be, but they have to do something. If I'm looking at this team right now, when you think Rob Williams has been often injured, Kristaps comes in often injured, and Al Horford, you're not playing him every year, playing him every other night. They have to go out and challenge themselves to find somebody who's going to be a consistent player to score the ball and to defend the way Grant does. And that is going to be their major question. And I've heard a lot of Celtic fans say, a good riddance, go ahead. I think they're going to miss it more than they believe.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I go back to the word that Chris used there, which is luxury. Like this is where you have to look at it and say, okay, if Joe Mazzulla's not going to play him, or if Grant's not going to be a regular rotational player, then what are you doing, right? I mean, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to pay a guy $13 million and then have a bunch of DMP CDs on his game log. So that's just, I think that he brought more to the table than they really allowed him to do last year, but I don't know why that would necessarily change going into this year. And I think that the toughness and that leadership stuff, that's got to come down to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. They got to fill that void.
The way the roster is constructed today, Giles, is this team better or worse than they were when they lost to Miami?
I think they're better. I do think they're better. And I'm counting on Kristaps Porzingis to be healthy, but I think that when you put him out there with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, I think that this team is better. Not by a large margin, and they're going to look completely different, and they're not going to have that same attitude with those two guys. But, yeah, I still do think they are.
You know, Max, off the top of the show, we heard from Chris Mannix talking about Damian Lillard, and he also wrote today that he disagrees with Giles. He thinks that if this roster stays exactly how it is right now, this team is worse off than it was last year because Porzingis is such a question mark between the health and the way that he played last year was in a year where he was playing for a contract. Do you think the Celtics are in a better position or a worse position right now?
Right now, I don't think they're as strong as they were because of the guys you lost. Perfectly honest, when you lose to Marcus Smart, you lose to Grant Williams, those guys were huge in what you did and what you were doing. So for me, you're talking about Kristaps coming in, can he have that kind of year? And this is what, they're banking on. Him playing in the paint, scoring the ball consistently. And we've seen a lot of times guys have contract years. They blow up. The next year, they don't. Hopefully that does not happen. If they play him and he's able to play well, they can do a lot of things. But right now, if you ask me today, I don't think this team is as strong today as it was the last game of the season.
All right, Forsberg, break the tie.
Talent is king in the NBA, and I feel good about the Celtics ceiling in the playoffs if everybody is healthy. But just as those guys laid out, I need to figure out how they're filling those Grant Williams minutes. I need to see what those big men are able to stay out on the floor and stay healthy. So I'll say, again, the ceiling may be a little bit higher, but I think navigating the season got a little bit more difficult, and it either puts a lot of pressure on the Sam Hausers and role players of the world, or Brad's got to continue to make some moves here to figure out how to ease the load on the guys that will play those front court minutes. Maybe we'll feel differently once the work is done, but right now I need to see a little bit more.
Yeah, Max.
Well, I tell you, Trenni, he tiptoed, man, all the way around that question. I thought you were twinkle toes for a while, man. She asked you a question: are they better or they're not better? You're like, well, if they do, and then maybe, man, you need to be at the circus right now. You were pretty good.
I think what Chris said is they're not as good. They're not as good. By the way, it's sort of an even split how people feel. It's like 29-21, 25-25. And so that's what happens. They have too many choices. So I guess people are all over the map about this team right now.